My daughter came home on a Tuesday. The sky was the kind of gray that feels permanent, like a sheet of worn-out paper. I saw her car pull into the driveway from the kitchen window. My heart, which had been a quiet, careful thing for months, gave a single hard thump against my ribs. This was it, the moment I had both dreaded and in a secret, shameful corner of my soul hoped for. For 2 years we had not spoken, not a word. The silence between us was a vast, frozen lake. I had spent those years walking its shore, looking out at the icy expanse, wondering if I would ever hear the crack of thaw. I thought that sound would be an apology, I was sure of it. I believed her return, if it ever happened, would be heavy with regret, bowed with the weight of "I'm sorry." She got out of the car. She didn't look bowed, she looked normal. She was carrying a paper bag from the bakery in town, the one she used to love. She walked up the path to the front door, the same path she'd run up as a little girl, with skinned knees and wildflowers in her fist. She didn't hesitate, she just came home, and when I opened the door and saw her face, I knew there was no shadow of deep regret in her eyes, no trembling lip, just a small tentative smile. A little nervous maybe, but not remorseful. "Hi, Mum," she said, just like that. As if she'd been gone for a weekend, not for 2 years that had carved canyons in my heart. In that moment, standing in the doorway with the damp, gray air between us, I waited for the old hurt to rise up. The bitter, aching pain that had been my companion for so long, I braced for it, but it didn't come. Instead, something quiet and entirely unexpected settled inside me, a realization soft as dust motes in the hallway light. The forgiveness I had been waiting for her to earn was never hers to ask for, it was always mine to give, and she hadn't come back for it. She had just come back, and I understood with a clarity that left me breathless that this was the only way it could have ever ended. My daughter's name is Chloe. From the moment she was placed in my arms, a red-faced, squalling miracle, she was a force of nature. She felt everything so deeply. Her joy was a sunrise filling every corner of the house. Her sadness was a thunderstorm, sudden and total. My husband, Tom, used to say she had a heart too big for her chest. He adored her. We both did. Tom was the calm to my occasional worry, the steady ground under our feet. He was a teacher, patient and kind. He could make Chloe laugh when she was in the fiercest of moods. Our life was simple and it was good. A little house with a big maple tree in the yard, board game nights, pancakes on Sunday mornings. We weren't rich in money, but we were rich in time, in laughter, in the quiet understanding that we were a team. Then when Chloe was 16, Tom got sick. It was a swift and cruel cancer that took him from us in less than a year. Our world, so bright and solid, shattered. The grief was a physical thing. It lived in the house with us, a third silent person in every room. Chloe's stormy heart broke in a new way, a quiet, internal way. She stopped playing the piano, which had been her passion. She became withdrawn at school. She clung to me one moment, then pushed me away the next. I was drowning in my own grief, but I tried to be her anchor. I tried to be both mother and father while my own heart felt like ashes. "It's just you and me now, my love," I'd whisper to her at night, smoothing her hair. "We'll get through this together," and we did, but it was a hard, slow climb. I worked extra shifts at the clinic where I was a nurse. I came home tired, my feet aching, to make dinners and ask about her day. I missed so many signs, trying to keep the roof over our heads and the grief at bay. Chloe finished school and went to university in the city 2 hours away. I helped her move into her dorm, a tiny room with cinderblock walls. I made her bed with the floral sheets she'd picked out. I stocked her mini fridge with juice. "You'll call me, won't you?" I said, trying not to cry. "Of course, Mum," she said, but her eyes were already looking past me at her new life, her new freedom. The distance between us, which had started as miles, slowly became something else. She came home less and less. Her calls became quick check-ins. "I'm fine, Mum, busy, got to go." She was finding herself, I told myself. That's what young people do. She was building a life. I was so proud of her independence, even as I missed her terribly. She graduated, she got a job in marketing, she moved in with a boyfriend, a man named Mark I had only met twice. She seemed happy in a bright, polished way. Our relationship settled into a pattern. She would visit for a holiday, bringing expensive gifts that felt impersonal. We would make polite conversation over a meal. It was like we were performing our roles as mother and daughter, reading from a script that was growing faint. I loved her with every fiber of my being, but I missed my girl, the one who would flop on my bed and tell me everything, the one who needed me. Then 5 years ago, she got engaged to Mark. I was overjoyed. Maybe this was a new beginning. I offered to help plan the wedding, to pay for the flowers, anything. She was grateful but firm. "We've got it all under control, Mum. It's very modern, very minimalist." The wedding was in a sleek downtown loft. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel like her, or maybe it felt like the her she had become, a person I didn't fully know. I gave a speech. I talked about Tom. I saw her eyes glisten, and for a second I saw my little girl. Then she blinked, and she was the elegant bride again. After the wedding, the visits became even more rare. She and Mark were busy building their careers, traveling. My life, in contrast, had grown very small. I had my work, my small garden, my book club with a few other widows. My world had once been so full of noise and life, now it was quiet, and in that quiet I longed for my daughter, not the successful, polished woman, but my Chloe. I started to call more just to hear her voice. I'd ask about her work, her holidays. I'd offer advice she didn't ask for. I'd send her articles I thought she'd like. I was trying to build a bridge back to her, one clumsy plank at a time. I didn't see that from her side. It might have looked like I was building a fence. A fence of expectations, of need, of a past she had worked hard to move beyond. The first real crack appeared on a bright, ordinary Sunday. She had agreed to come for lunch, just her. Mark was away on a business trip. I spent all morning cooking. I made her favorite roast chicken with lemon and herbs, the way my mother used to make it. The house smelled of warmth and memory. I set the table with the good china, the set Tom and I got for our wedding. When she arrived, she looked tired, but she smiled and hugged me. Something smells amazing. We sat down to eat. I filled her plate. I asked a dozen questions. How was work? How was Mark? Had they thought about buying a house? When might they think about children? She answered politely but in short sentences. She pushed the food around her plate. Is it not good, love? I asked, my heart sinking. It's great, Mum, I'm just not that hungry. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. How's your garden? She finally asked, and I lit up. I told her about the roses, the troublesome squirrels, my new compost bin. I talked for 10 minutes straight. When I finally paused, I saw her looking out the window, a distant expression on her face. That's nice, Mum, she said, but her voice was flat. A little knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I was losing her. This conversation, this connection was slipping through my fingers like sand. Is everything okay, Chloe? I reached across the table and put my hand on hers. You can talk to me, you know that, right? She looked at my hand on hers, then slowly pulled her own hand away to take a sip of water. Everything's fine, Mum, just work stress. Are you sure? Because you seem distant. She put her glass down a little too hard. I'm just tired, and honestly, Mum, sometimes these visits feel like an interrogation. The word hung in the air, interrogation. An interrogation, I repeated, my voice small. I'm just asking about your life. I'm interested. I'm your mother. I know you are, she said, sighing. But every question feels like a checkup, like you're grading my life. Are you successful enough? Are you happy enough? Are you going to give me grandchildren? It's a lot of pressure. I felt like I'd been slapped. I sat back in my chair. I don't mean it that way. I just miss you. I want to be part of your life. You're part of my life, she said, but it sounded like a line from a manual. But my life is different now. It's not the same as when I was a kid or when Dad was alive. It can't be, that was it, the unspoken thing, the ghost at the table, our life before versus her life now, and I was a living relic of that before. A reminder of a loss she had spent years trying to outrun. The lunch ended shortly after, the rest of the food congealed on our plates. She helped me clear the table, the clatter of dishes the only sound. As she was leaving, she gave me a quick, stiff hug. Thanks for lunch. Anytime, my love, I whispered, but she was already turning toward her car. That was the pebble, the one that started the landslide. After that, the space between our calls grew longer. My messages would go unanswered for days. When I did get her on the phone, her voice was polite but hurried. I started to measure my words, terrified of saying the wrong thing, of seeming needy, of being an interrogation. My loneliness grew teeth. It whispered to me in the empty house, she doesn't need you anymore. You're a burden, you're just a reminder of sad things. I began to resent Mark, who I barely knew. I blamed him for taking her away, for building a shiny new life that had no room for me. I resented her job, her friends, anything that was more important to her than I was. The conflict was never loud. It was a cold war of silence and missed connections. My birthday came. She sent a beautiful bouquet of flowers with a generic card. Happy birthday, Mum. Love, Chloe. No call. I waited by the phone all day. It never rang. Christmas that year was the worst. She and Mark were going to the Caribbean with his family. It's just easier, Mum, you understand. I didn't understand. I spent Christmas Day with a frozen dinner, watching old movies and crying. The house felt like a museum dedicated to a family that no longer existed. I became angry. Not a hot, shouting anger, but a cold, brittle one. How could she do this after all I had sacrificed? After losing Tom, had I given her everything? Didn't I deserve her time, her love, her respect? My hurt curdled into a sense of righteous injury. I started a new terrible habit. I would write her long emails late at night, fueled by wine and loneliness. I wouldn't send them, I'd save them in a draft folder. They were full of my pain, my accusations, my list of everything I'd done for her and everything she was failing to do for me. Reading them back in the morning, I was ashamed. They were not the words of a mother, they were the cries of a wounded child, but the feeling behind them was real. I felt abandoned, betrayed. The final straw, the one that broke the silence for 2 years, was about the house. I had decided to downsize. The house was too big, the garden too much work, it was full of ghosts. I found a lovely little cottage near the river. I was excited. It felt like a brave new start. I called Chloe to tell her. I pictured us going through the old things together, deciding what to keep, sharing memories. It could be a project, a way to reconnect. When I told her, there was a long pause on the line. "That's big news, Mum. I know, but it's a good thing. I was thinking you could come next weekend. We could start in the attic. Your old things are up there. It would be nice to do it together." Another pause. I could hear her typing on a keyboard in the background. "Next weekend isn't good for me. Mark and I have plans, and honestly, Mum, I don't really need any of that old stuff. Just toss it or donate it." Toss it. The words were like a door slamming shut. All her childhood treasures, the artwork, the stuffed animals, the boxes of memories I had carefully saved. Toss it. It wasn't just about the stuff, it was about our shared history, it was about the value of our past. And she was throwing it away, she was throwing me away. The cold, brittle anger I had been nursing finally snapped. "Just toss it," I repeated, my voice icy. "Is that what you think of all of it, of everything, of me?" "Mum, don't be dramatic, I just don't have space for it. I live in an apartment." "This isn't about space, Chloe," I heard my voice rise, shrill and unfamiliar. "This is about you erasing your past, erasing your father, erasing me. You've been doing it for years. You got your new life and you left the old one and me behind like yesterday's rubbish." The silence on the other end was absolute, no typing, just a dead, hollow silence. Then her voice came through, quiet and clear. It was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. It was calm, final. "I can't do this right now, Mum. I can't have you speak to me like this. I think we need a break from talking for a while, a break." "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means I need some space. I'll call you when I'm ready." And she hung up just like that. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, the phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone, the sound of nothing. It was the sound of the next 2 years of my life. The silence was absolute. For the first few weeks, I was in a state of shock. I expected her to call any moment. She would realize how harsh she'd been. She would apologize, surely, but the call never came. I broke first, of course. After a month, I sent a text. "I'm sorry for shouting. I miss you. Can we talk?" No reply. I sent an email, a long, pleading one full of apologies and promises to do better. Silence. I called on her birthday. It went straight to voicemail. I left a shaky, tearful message. "Happy birthday, my darling girl. I love you." Nothing. The realization that she was truly, intentionally not speaking to me was a physical agony. It was a constant, gnawing pain in my chest. I felt like a mother who had lost her child, but worse, because my child was alive and choosing to be lost from me. I cycled through every emotion: deep, crushing grief, white-hot rage, profound shame. What kind of mother was I that my own daughter could cut me out so completely? I replayed every interaction, every word I'd ever said to her, searching for the moment I broke her. Was I too clingy, too critical? Did I not love her enough? Did I love her too much? The holidays were deserts of pain. Her absence was a presence louder than any noise. I saw mothers and daughters everywhere, in the supermarket, in cafes, and each sight was a fresh wound. I became a ghost in my own life. I went to work, I came home, I stared at the walls, the draft folder on my computer filled with unsent letters, each one a monument to my pain. I became obsessed with the idea of an apology, her apology. That was the magic key. If she would just call and say, "I'm sorry for cutting you off, Mum," then the healing could begin. Then the door would be unlocked. My forgiveness was there waiting, but she had to come and claim it with her remorse. That was my story. That was the narrative I held onto for survival. I was the wronged party. I was waiting for justice, for acknowledgement. A year passed, then 18 months. The icy lake of our silence seemed permanent. I started to think this was it. This was how my story would end. Alone, unforgiven, unforgiving. Then I got sick. It wasn't serious, just a bad case of pneumonia that left me weak and housebound for a few weeks. My friends from book club checked on me, my neighbor brought soup, but the person I wanted, the person whose absence was a howling void in my sickbed, was her. Lying there feeling frail and old, I had a lot of time to think. The anger had burned itself out, leaving only a deep, tired ashes of sadness. One afternoon, staring at the ceiling, a thought drifted into my mind, quiet but insistent. What if she never apologizes? The question terrified me. I pushed it away. But it came back. What if this is it? What if you go to your grave with this silence between you? Is that what you want? And then the hardest question of all, what are you really waiting for? In the deep quiet of my convalescence, without the energy to fuel my own hurt, I began to see things from a distance. I saw a young woman who had lost her father tragically young, who had a mother drowning in grief, who had to grow up too fast, who built a new life perhaps as a fortress against more loss, and who felt that fortress being besieged by the very person from her past, a past full of pain. I saw my own neediness, my constant pulling at her, my unspoken demands for her time, her attention, her love to fill the holes Tom had left in me. I wasn't just asking for a daughter. I was asking her to be my anchor, my purpose, my everything. That was a weight no child should have to carry. For the first time, I didn't just feel my pain, I felt or tried to imagine hers. The pressure she must have felt, the guilt, the desire to just live her own life, free from the shadow of our shared tragedy. I didn't agree with what she did. The silence was cruel, but I began to understand it. And with understanding, the hard knot of victimhood inside me began ever so slightly to loosen. I didn't reach out. The fear of more rejection was too great, but I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. I stopped drafting angry emails. I just lived in the quiet with the understanding. And then 6 months later, on that gray Tuesday, she came back. So there she was on my doorstep with bakery bread and a tentative smile. No grand apology, just her. Hi, Mom. All my rehearsed speeches, all my conditions, all my demands for remorse evaporated. They were just stories I had told myself to make the pain make sense. I stepped back. Come in, I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me. She came inside, wiping her feet on the mat like she always did. She looked around the hallway at the same pictures, the same coat stand. It was all familiar, yet everything was different. I brought you some of that sourdough you like, she said, holding out the bag. I took it. Thank you, that's kind. An awkward silence hung between us, 2 years condensed into this thick, heavy moment in the hallway. Would you like some tea? I asked, falling back on the old British reflex. Yes, please. We moved into the kitchen, the heart of the home, the place where we'd had our last terrible fight. I put the kettle on. She sat at the table watching me. The normalcy of the actions, filling the kettle, getting out mugs, the tea bags, was surreal. It was as if we were trying to remember how to be normal together. I brought the tea over and sat down. We both held our mugs, the warmth a tangible thing in the cold space between us. How have you been? She asked, a simple, enormous question. I looked at her, really looked. She had a few fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She looked older, wiser, a little weary. I've been all right, I said. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't a lie either. Getting by, how are you? She took a breath. I'm better. She didn't offer details. She didn't launch into an explanation. She just said she was better, and I knew in that moment that the 2 years had been hard for her too. The silence had been a burden she carried as well. I'm glad, I said, and I was. We sipped our tea. The silence wasn't hostile now. It was fragile like a spider's web after rain. Mark and I, we split up, she said, not looking at me. Oh, Chloe, I'm so sorry. The words were automatic but heartfelt. She shrugged, a small, sad movement. It was for the best. It's been almost a year now. A year she'd been going through a divorce and I hadn't known. The thought was a fresh ache, but a different kind, not an ache of betrayal, but of shared sadness missed from afar. That must have been very hard, I said. She nodded. It was. It made me think about a lot of things, about family, about what's important. She didn't say she thought about me. But she didn't have to. We talked a little more, surface things, her new apartment, my move to the cottage by the river, which I had done alone during the silence. We talked about practical, safe things. We were two explorers, cautiously mapping the new, unfamiliar territory between us. She didn't say, I'm sorry for the silence. I didn't say, I'm sorry for the pressure. The words felt too big, too clumsy for this delicate new bridge we were standing on. They belonged to the old story, the story of blame and injury. After an hour, she stood to leave. I should go, I just wanted to see you. I walked her to the door. The gray light had softened into a pale evening glow. She turned to me. There were tears in her eyes now, not the dramatic tears of apology I had imagined, but quiet, genuine ones. I missed you, Mum, she whispered, and that was it. That was her offering, not an apology for the past, but a truth for the present. I missed you. It was worth more than any I'm sorry could ever be. I missed you too, my love, I said, my own eyes filled. Every single day, we hugged, a real hug, not the stiff, performative ones from before the silence. It was tight and long and full of 2 years of unspoken sorrow and longing. We held on as if we were anchoring each other to a shared shore. When she pulled away, she gave a small, teary smile. I'd like to come again if that's okay. My door is always open, I said. And for the first time, I meant it without condition, without a hidden plea. I watched her drive away. I closed the door and leaned against it. I expected to feel a storm of emotion. Triumph, validation, relief, but what I felt was quiet, a deep, profound quiet. The war was over, and there was no victor, there was just peace. The forgiveness I had guarded so jealously, waiting for her to earn it, had simply happened. It hadn't been a ceremony, it hadn't been spoken. It had been in the making of tea. In the sharing of a difficult truth, in a hug on a gray Tuesday, it had been mine to give all along, and in letting go of my need for her regret, I had finally been able to give it. She did come again. The next week for a proper lunch, this time I didn't cook a feast. We made sandwiches together, we talked more easily. We are learning slowly how to be in each other's lives again, not as the mother and child we once were, bound by dependency and grief, but as two women who share a deep history and a complicated love. I don't know if we will ever discuss the 2 years of silence in detail. Maybe we will one day, maybe we won't. It doesn't seem to matter as much as I thought it did. The lesson wasn't about who was right or wrong. Life is rarely that simple. The lesson was about where we place the power to heal. I had placed it in her hands. I thought, if she says she's sorry, then I can be okay. I made my peace conditional on her behavior. And in doing so, I gave her all the power, and I condemned myself to waiting in the cold. True forgiveness isn't something someone gives to you, it's something you build for yourself. It's the decision to put down the heavy ledger of wrongs, even if the other person never acknowledges their side of the column. It's choosing your own peace over the perpetuation of pain. It doesn't mean what happened was okay, it doesn't mean you forget. It just means you decide that carrying the hurt is too heavy a burden for the journey ahead. When she returned without regret, I realized the apology I needed was never going to come in the form I expected. But something better did, the chance for a new beginning. A beginning built not on the shaky ground of past grievances, but on the simple, enduring fact of love that had survived even in the silence. My door is open now. Not because she earned the right to walk through it, but because I finally chose to unlock it from the inside. And that has made all the difference.